Okay, so my name is Charlotte, and I'm here to talk about my experience as a donation coordinator for 412 Food Rescue. So 412 Food Rescue is an interesting program. It's fairly new, and most people in the room already know this, but we are an organization that rescues food from grocery stores and produce suppliers and brings it to housing sites, daycare centers, senior centers all over the city. It sounds like a really simple program. We use volunteers, but actually, on the day-to-day, it was really complicated. It's one of those things that looks simple from a distance, but then you get closer and you see all of this mess and all of these personal problems. So when I started at 412, how it worked was we would get a phone call with a donation, and I would have to just find a volunteer to go pick it up. But what that looked like in practice was texting 15 people, posting on Facebook, calling someone, begging someone to leave work during their lunch break to pick something up. Everything I did took half an hour of just direct talking to people to even make a start. That was how it looked for the first couple of weeks. And then we got this app, and the app was supposed to change the entire game for me. The app was going to make my job as simple as pushing a button, and then volunteers would be notified that a rescue was available, and they would just immediately show up for it. It was going to be like Uber. Uber is so easy, everyone uses it, right? But that's not exactly how it worked. What actually happened was that instead of me calling people, people were calling me because the app was dysfunctional. So there were days when I would get so many phone calls that I couldn't do anything else at work. There was one 20-minute period back in December where I got 5 phone calls in 20 minutes. I would hang up the phone and just hit next and answer it again. It was really frustrating. And people didn't understand what the problem with the app was, because when they looked at the front of it, the user-facing side looked so simple. It was just a map with icons. But from our end, it looked like 13 pages of text. And I wish that I could have showed you screenshots, but they all had people's identifying information, so I couldn't. But there was like 1,200 individual lines that I had to read through and keep track of. And then dealing with the improvements to the app was like pushing a boulder up a mountain, because the tech team was these 4 app developers, the dev team. And the operations team that I was on was 3 women that were not at all technologically inclined. So as the main person answering the phones, I would go to these tech meetings that would last for 3 hours, and I would have these long qualitative stories about, Joanne Arendt, who is 70 and doesn't know how to use her iPhone, was driving down Allegheny River Boulevard when her GPS suddenly told her to turn into the river, and she called me upset, and she didn't know what to do, and she was driving 70 miles an hour, and I had to give her directions over the phone. And the tech team would say, well, what version of her iPhone did she have? Was her iPhone updated? And I would say, I don't know. She was driving down Allegheny River Boulevard. I didn't have time to ask her that. So it was so frustrating to go to these meetings because it felt like I was putting in so much effort. It was like this long trek to get through these 3-hour tech meetings. And then I would come back to the office and my team would say, so are they fixing the GPS? And I would say, I don't even know if they know there's a problem with the GPS. Like, I don't know if they could even hear me. So the thing is, it actually did get better through those meetings. It took dozens of hours of talking to the tech team, but I eventually learned how to get through to them. And one of the best moments of my entire Public Allies time was that I actually found a bug in the app that was identifiable and could be fixed, which was like, I was like walking on air. I went into this meeting and I told them there was a problem. They told me that's impossible, that can't happen. And I had 6 screenshots of it happening. And it was so satisfying to have a problem that could be fixed like that. And the thing about the app overall was that it actually did help. We went from having to call people, to having to text people, to having to do all of this online customer support, to really functioning. There were days when I could find 20 volunteers in an hour using the app. So as much as it felt like pushing a rock uphill, we eventually got there. And the thing about our entire organization was that we would have these meetings where we would be so frustrated with the fact that we weren't meeting our goals, we weren't meeting targets, we weren't growing fast enough. But then when I turned and looked back at the end of my service, it had taken us 14 months to rescue our first £1 million and 6 months to rescue our second. So we had grown by 50% in that time that I was there. And I just wanted to read this quote. This is a quote from Thomas Merton. It's from Letter to a Young Activist. And it's about staying inspired even when you feel like your work isn't being appreciated isn't going fast enough. It's a little bit long, sorry. So he says, do not depend on the hope of results. When you're doing the sort of work you have taken on, you may have to face the fact that your work may be apparently useless and even achieve no result at all. As you ease to this idea, you start more and more to concentrate not on the results, but on the value, the rightness, and the truth of the work itself. You gradually struggle less and less for an idea and more for specific people. So when I was thinking about my presentation of learning presentation, I was thinking about all of the individual days that I did things wrong. And I was thinking about how it took me 5 months to fully feel fluent in all of our sites and feel like I knew what was going on in the organization. So we have 201 donors and 289 recipients. And I just thought about every day that I called someone the wrong name, or I called the wrong number, or I sent something to the wrong place. But then I thought about how now when I drive around the city, I know where I am, and I know so much more about just how the city works. When I was thinking about driving here to Warrington, I thought about how the building that we're in right now is across the street from one of our sites, Caligari, and I thought about Bill, who lives there. And then I remembered that it was 2 blocks from the Allentown Learning Association, and I thought about Maggie. Now she's getting a donation of produce tomorrow on Wednesday. So it made me realize that even though I felt the entire time like I was taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, even going at that pace, I was still learning and making progress.